Gaming Bolt presents the top 30 best open world games of this generation you absolutely need to play. Open world games are a tough genre to develop for, whether it's the copious amounts of activities or the enormous sandbox that must be created. That being said, some games make it look effortless, even with their odd warts. Join us as we rank the top 30 open world games of this generation. We'll only be looking at the quality of the open world with its side quests and activities throughout, rather than the quality of storytelling, so keep that in mind. Mass Effect Andromeda. No, Mass Effect Andromeda isn't the best game in the world, and yes, there are plenty of better open world games you should play first, like maybe the next 29 titles. That being said, there are some decent side missions to explore, and the loyalty missions are fun enough to run. It also doesn't hurt that the game's combat makes exploring the admittedly barren open world fun as you mow down heaps of enemies with shield drains, flamethrowers, and teleport slashes. Infamous Second Son. The karma system may be kind of laughable, but Infamous Second Son brought new enemies, an interesting, if not quite refined, parkour system, and some fun combat to the table. Again, the open world missions are nothing new, but combined with superpowers, destructible environments, and the satisfying combat, you'll be busy destroying things while exploring the gorgeous world. The Division. Incorporating more of an action RPG approach to its gameplay, Tom Clancy's The Division is nonetheless full of different activities to undertake. You have side missions for exploring the city or taking down hostile factions, finding missing persons and agents, collecting cell phones to learn more about the world state before the outbreak, and much more. That's not including search and destroy missions, incursions, the dark zone, the underground, survival mode, last stand, and much more. Mad Max. How many games feature car combat in a huge open world where you scrap together parts in impromptu skirmishes to upgrade your vehicle when not engaged in Batman Arkham-style brawls? Mad Max is a fun game even with its rough edges, and the post-apocalyptic world looks really good, though its activities are pretty spaced out. Once you step on the gas and harpoon some baddies though, it won't really matter. Just Cause 3. Taking its brand of destruction even further, Just Cause 3 ups the ante with its scale, selection of vehicles, and potential for mayhem. You're once again encouraged to create as much havoc as possible, but now you're doing it with multiple grappling hooks and new weapons. There are tons of secrets to discover, like a Stargate Easter egg, and challenges to complete. Even if it doesn't quite feel as fresh or complete as Just Cause 2, Just Cause 3 is still a rip-roaring time. Ghost Recon Wildlands. This isn't your dad's Tom Clancy game, or novel for that matter. Ghost Recon Wildlands uses a basic amount of stealth and gadgets to allow for intriguing gameplay, but the real appeal is the open world chaos you can create with friends. Try piloting several gunships at once, or go full-on Spec Ops, coordinating your moves and systematically decimating a base with knives and silenced weapons. With weapons, outposts, additional parts, rebel resources to loot, and caravans to attack, not to mention a completely non-linear campaign, there's plenty to keep you busy even if the AI isn't too smart or the missions too inventive. Sniper Elite 4. Unlike its contemporary, Sniper Ghost Warrior 3, Sniper Elite is nice enough to pack large open maps that actually provides variety to how you complete objectives. Maps are more vertical and players can climb up buildings to find better vantage points. The awesome X-ray system returns, as does the satisfying sniping, and there are even night missions to further add to the challenge of sneaking around. Final Fantasy XV. After nearly a year of updates and revamps, Final Fantasy XV's open world is even more enticing than ever. If you're not interested in the time-limited events or DLC though, there are still plenty of quests to undertake, like monster hunts, scavenging, and the odd fetch quest. Your companions and the beautiful locales help make the journey memorable, even as the combat and camera can get a little flaky. Dying Light. Techland's open-world FPS zombie survival title may have had some missteps at launch, but it's evolved into one of the finer open-world experiences out there. If you're not looting supply drops, then you're engaging heaps of zombies in random events or completing challenges. Higher tiers of gear can be crafted, lending a real action RPG style of progression to the action, and that's not even taking into account all of the buggy riding in the following. If you swore off the game because of its bland story, then the open world of Dying Light is definitely worth revisiting. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. For better or worse, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain had a ton of hype behind it, as it should because it's bringing the series full circle. The story may not have satisfied fans and the open world felt repetitive with its mission design. There's still a great amount of variety to be had within the gameplay. You can choose to outright attack bases, engage in stealth, or get creative in all kinds of wacky ways, which includes Fultoning soldiers and throwing rocket punches. Watch Dogs 2. You know Watch Dogs 2 means business when Ubisoft abandons its famed towers. Jokes aside, the non-linear style of progression in the sequel is aided by a unique set of activities, like infiltrating high-rises using a combination of stealth and hacking to steal what seems to be a high-tech car. With a good cast, variety of mission objectives, and revamped movement and combat, Watch Dogs 2 is a huge improvement over the original. Fallout 4. While many are offended by how Fallout 4 simplifies its decision-making and role-playing elements, at least in the base game, Bethesda's open world is still a thing of beauty. There's something special about turning on old-world jazz and stumbling upon locations like the Museum of Witchcraft or Dunwich Borers. Fallout 4 also throws in plenty of random elements to keep you exploring, whether it's a battle between factions or a town of Mr. Handy robots out to kill you. Far Cry 4. Though not a huge improvement over Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4 did leverage current-gen hardware to deliver a more beautiful experience, rife with the same towers to capture, animals to hunt, outposts to assault, and so on. Neat little twists like having to retake outposts from the enemy, random caravan assaults, gyrocopter flying, and more add to the fun, gunplay, and heaps of locations to discover. Assassin's Creed Syndicate. With Ubisoft ditching the multiplayer component of past titles, Assassin's Creed Syndicate actually has a very solid range of side missions to complete. You'll be teaming with figures like Charles Darwin and Alexander Graham Bell on wacky missions, unlocking the series' signature towers, upgrading your train base, buying new weapons and outfits, and having two main characters to traipse around with. It may not be revolutionary, but Assassin's Creed Syndicate is a huge improvement over Unity. Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. Sleeping Dogs is an open-world game from Square Enix and United Front Games that looks all sorts of awesome. The game is entirely set in Hong Kong, and you play as Wei Shin, an undercover cop. The premise sounds fantastic already, doesn't it? People who wanted some exotic locations like these will undoubtedly be pleased with this game, as it contains a lot of gameplay density for you to fool around. And UFG has given you tons of tools to do that. Saints Row from THQ and GTA from Rockstar are their obvious rivals, but one thing is for certain, Sleeping Dogs seems to provide the fun and excitement of all of these games combined. Batman Arkham Knight. Say what you will about the Batmobile and how it impedes on the core story, Batman Arkham Knight simply embodies every single aspect of being the Dark Knight, from vehicular combat to challenging situations with the Riddler, mind games with the Arkham Knight, and so on. Upgrades, AR challenges, obstacle courses, additional villains to hunt, crime scenes to investigate, and much more dot the beautiful world of Gotham, and they can be pretty fun to complete. Sunset Overdrive. Sunset Overdrive doesn't exactly rewrite the book on open world design, but with its zany weapons, awesome movement system, and bombastic art style, there's plenty of fun to be had. There's actually a good variety to the side missions, whether it's demonstrating your parkour prowess or killing enemies in all sorts of wicked ways for the sake of filming. Sunset Overdrive can be best described as Jet Set Radio meets Ratchet & Clank, which means it should be on your radar immediately. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. After the fairly disappointing Assassin's Creed 3, Ubisoft decided to go all out with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. The cross-generation game brought a huge open world set in the age of pirates, and the amount of things to do was staggering. When you're not exploring ruins, there's deep-sea diving for treasure, ship combat, laying siege to forts, stealth missions, fighting sharks, and so on. Despite its slower-paced combat compared to Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the open world of Black Flag is still a joy to behold. Borderlands, the Handsome Collection. Though technically released for the previous generation of consoles, Borderlands the Handsome Collection delivers two amazing FPS RPGs with large open worlds to explore on Xbox One and PS4. Borderlands 2 features tons of side quest content, with some pretty funny scripting and enough hidden nooks, bosses, and loot to garner. Borderlands the pre-sequel isn't quite as big, but there's still plenty to see and lots of colorful characters to interact with. And that's not counting the DLC included with both releases. The Witness. Many of the open world games on this list emphasize traveling around, completing side quests, talking to wacky characters, and maybe leveling up. The Witness has none of that. you're instead deposited into a mysterious environment with lots of puzzles to solve, ranging from perspective-based conundrums to puzzles that loop back to previous puzzles. It's infectious and endearing, especially because it all contributes to helping you unlock the true ending and the meaning of the game. Regardless, The Witness has tons of unique environments to explore and puzzles to solve. Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. There are several games which take established tropes and attempts to cross them with a beloved property. Few have been as successful with this approach as Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Its Nemesis system offered players an interesting metagame of dominating and assassinating orcs in order to draw out Sauron's highest-ranking minions. That's not including some of the stories that would emerge from battling random nemesis. There were still tons of interesting side quests to complete and areas to explore with amazing abilities to unlock. Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Of course, Middle-earth: Shadow of War took all of that to a much larger scale. There's a staggering amount of stuff to do, from building an army of orc followers and leveling them up, assaulting keeps and protecting said keeps, to discovering higher tiers of gear and weaponry, engaging in arena battles, and what have you. The Nemesis system also returns in grand fashion, lending even more to personal narratives that pervade the Middle-earth titles than before. Yakuza 0. Much like Kiwami, Yakuza 0 is chock full of things to do despite a relatively smaller open world. You'll learn new martial arts techniques, protect celebrities, help a dominatrix get her groove back, serve as a producer for a video shoot, and of course, beat up random thugs. If the story of Yakuza 0, and by extension Yakuza Kiwami, aren't enough, there's so much to accomplish by running around in the world that it's not even funny. Yakuza Kiwami. Look, Yakuza Kiwami is a great game. It doesn't have the scale of Mass Effect Andromeda's world, but you know what it does have? Sub-stories which include talking a guy down from a ledge, arcade games, dancing, and much more. There's just so much to do in the world of Yakuza Kiwami that the overall size doesn't even matter. That's not even including your random encounters with Majima Goro. Forza Horizon 3. Perhaps the epitome of awesome open-world racing, Forza Horizon 3 is just great, even if you're not a racing enthusiast. The world is rife with street races, championships, and bucket list challenges, not to mention the fun showcase events. You can discover worn-down vehicles and bring them in for refurbishing, expand your festival to different locations, you name it. The lack of fast travel in the opening hours is uncool, but you'll forgive it when driving out in the open world. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition. Perhaps the forefather of massive open worlds filled with dungeons, side quests, missions, and loot. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition marks the game's debut on current-gen consoles. Sure, it's just a prettier version of the base game and its DLC, but Skyrim Special Edition still has tons of handcrafted dungeons to explore, wicked enemies to fight, houses to build, dogs to adopt, and factions to join. Chart your own path and have a blast. Horizon Zero Dawn. For a game that's essentially Killzone developer Guerrilla Games' first open-world effort, Horizon Zero Dawn was executed incredibly well. The open world mixes strong side quest design with cauldrons, wild robots that must be hunted for upgrades, interesting secrets like the Shield Weaver armor, and impressive structures to engage in extensive platforming. It also doesn't hurt that the main story is genuinely interesting and full of mysterious lore to delve into. Grand Theft Auto V. Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto V was a long time coming, and for what was essentially a last-generation title, its attention to detail and epic scope translated over to the current generation incredibly well. Whether it was the addition of first-person perspective and improved textures or the constant free GTA Online updates only available on the Xbox One, PS4, and PC, Grand Theft Auto V's numerous open-world activities, heists, and jobs cement it as one of the best open-world games ever. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The goal of CD Projekt Red with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was to make a huge game. Its side quests mostly avoided the standard fetch quest formula, incorporating interesting narrative twists, while the world was dotted with unique points of interest. That's not including the amazing cinematic story, but the sheer number of monster hunts, contracts, scavenger hunts, and side missions were enough to keep players busy for a long, long time. It also doesn't hurt that the game is incredibly gorgeous, whether you're navigating the high seas or assisting an assassination in Novigrad. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Hailed as one of the greatest open-world games of all time, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild emphasizes exploration like none of its predecessors. Players can chart their own paths after the initial few shrines, and there's an incredible sense of discovery around every corner because there's usually something interesting around every corner. Towers only serve to uncover the map, rather than outline everything, and the world is full of incredible little details that encourage you to mix up your style of play. Combat is top-notch, even with weapon breakage, and the world as a whole feels so natural and inviting to explore compared to most games in general. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Vault, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.